Hello, guys, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. And today we're talking about the new HBO Max movie, Am I Okay, with Dakota Johnson and Tig Notaro and her wife were directors for this movie. And I'm a big Tig Notaro fan. So I actually saw this movie 2 years ago when Sundance released it. They did like a virtual thing. So I was like, oh, it's gay and Tig Notaro. Let me see it. And I had forgotten about it because I've been waiting to see when it was going to hit streaming. And then I saw the trailer. I was like, we should cover this for the podcast because it'd be fun. So this is the first time you guys are seeing it. And yes, I did rewatch it because it has been 2 years since I've seen it.
It
so
was
I
funny
rewatched
when I
it.
Googled it, I was like, it came up with a 2022 date on it. And I was like, but it's 2024. Like what happened? When was this movie released?
It took a long time for it to hit streaming. I know when it came out of Sundance, they're like, HBO Max has it. Can't wait. And then it just took 2 years to do so.
That's crazy.
But
There's really no reason to leave it on the shelf either.
It's such a cheap movie, it looks like too. So I don't understand any of that. And I guess it came out of the height of COVID, so maybe that was it. But yeah, HBO Max released it.
Licensing issues and things that we don't know about behind the scenes.
But it seems like such an indie film. It'd be so weird. Like, what license is there? Like, if it was like Guardians of the Galaxy, I can understand. But let's talk about what the movie is about, and then we'll go around the table, first impressions and all that. But it's about Dakota Johnson's character, who is kind of figuring out life, figuring out her sexuality, doesn't even know she's figuring out her sexuality, and her best friend moving back to London. And really, it's a movie about their friendship more than anything, but it's also their trials of figuring out who they are as people. It's a really short movie. It's that sweet 90 minutes. Again, it is directed by Tig Notaro and Stephanie. And you get a lot of their dry humor in it. You get the queer narrative. But yeah, let's hear first impressions. So let's go with Amy first. What did you think of this one? First of all, I feel like I threw this at you guys. I'm like, it's gay. Let's watch it, which tends to happen with movies that we watch.
I was like, sure, okay.
I was thoroughly engrossed by this film. I was really busy. I was planning on meal prepping while I watched this movie and cleaning and folding laundry while I watched this movie. Nope. I ended up just straight up staring at it to the point where I forgot what time it was. And I looked at the clock and I go, oh my gosh, we're supposed to be recording right now. Like, I straight up just...
About this movie.
I was so engrossed. I really, really enjoyed it. And I really loved that there was... The story doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. Because a lot of times when we see these movies, the two friends who are girls happen to discover they're in love with each other. And that's not the case in this. It is about friendship that doesn't necessarily lead to something like romance or a sexual relationship. But the two of them do very much love each other. And I think I really, really connected with kind of this friend breakup that they went through and what it's like to recognize you've broken up with this person whom you love and you don't even realize you've broken up with them, and then all of a sudden try to find your way back to each other in a non-romantic era. But I also loved the story of her trying to figure it out, and that connected a lot with me because I am also about 33 years old and trying to figure everything out. And so it was really relevant for me to find a character in a movie who is my age with a lot of the things that I am going through, who also feels kind of a little stuck. Because a lot of times the characters who are stuck, they're in late high school. They're in college. It's strange to be someone who's a working professional and also kind of stuck. And so we have different paths. We have different levels of stuck. We have different levels of work, where we're at in our lives, so to speak. But I really connected with Lucy on just that kind of sensation where she was sitting there talking and being like, shouldn't I have had this figured out by now? Shouldn't I have known by now? Shouldn't I have been able to figure this out by now? Is something wrong with me because I'm still stuck? And then having this person who is there and trying to be there for them until they reach the point where that person is no longer able to be there for you. And I've also been on that side of a friendship where you've worked so hard to try to get things better and help this person, and until they're willing to help themselves, you kind of have to do that thing where you go, I gotta stop. I gotta, cut the cord right here because I can no longer support this. So I really connected with the film. I thought it was really clean, really crisp. I liked the pacing. I liked that the story ends with an ending, but it's not necessarily the like happily ever after ending you think it's going to be. She doesn't end up finding her one true love through dating. She doesn't end up falling in love. Like, they don't end up revealing that both characters are lesbian and they're definitely in love with each other.
Sure.
Like, it just ends up being a kind of story about, okay, this is the start of another journey. We have closed this chapter. We're starting another chapter, but we're starting it together as friends again. We've gone through this thing. It's going to make us stronger. And I thought that was really well done and really relatable. Like, I just really enjoyed the writing and the pacing of this film altogether. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I agree. There's just so many layers to it, which I saw it 2 years ago and I kind of forgot how nuanced this movie was, because I do think of it being visually, it's a little boring. It's very much like you talked. It's not like a visually interesting
Indie-ish.
movie, but but also it doesn't have to be, right? Just because it's so uniquely organic, where again, the coming out story is really different. You feel for these characters. It's very much again about friendship, but like the nuances of friendship. And it felt like I was just like a fly in the wall of a real person, which I very, very much enjoyed. And I think Dakota Johnson in particular, and her friend too, but Dakota Johnson in particular, this is like her wheelhouse, right? This is this is what she does really, really well. And I'm glad after Madam Web, a movie like this could come out where it's just like, no, this is why we like Dakota Johnson. She's kind of like this hidden funny person, and you're like, oh yeah.
It makes me upset that she isn't in more like comedy stuff, because way back in the day she was in like a 1-season sitcom that got canceled that I am the only person who ever watched, but it was called like Ben and Kate. And it was like
never
her
seen that.
and her brother, and I think it was like her brother's kid or her kid or something like that. Anyway, it was very cute and she was very funny in it. And so I keep seeing her get like cast in all these movies, and I'm like, why don't they cast her in sitcom, like in a comedy? She's very funny. And so I felt like this was like the perfect, like it was almost like this part was written for Dakota Johnson, because she can do that awkward so well, and she can do the comedy so well. And I thought the banter between her and her friend felt so like organic, so real. Like these two people were actually like lifelong friends. Like the whole thing that they have back and forth about the muffin and when she can eat the muffin, and they're gonna split the bran muffin at the beginning, and then they're gonna have the bloobs at the end. And I just thought that was so funny. Like it just felt like something that like real friends do, where the one friend is like, no, we have to split this muffin now, and then we're gonna split this other muffin later. It's like so specific, and I really liked that about like a lot of the dialogue. Even when they were getting into heavy stuff, they would like throw in a joke like you would when you're talking to one of your friends.
Even the texting, I think somehow texting worked really well in this movie, because that's always a really hard thing in film, is how do you make organic texting, and they did that really well. I also think they did a really, really good job at, again, we were talking about a character who's stuck, and sometimes when you have a character who's stuck, it's like, well, now I'm going on this wonderful adventure, and again, I fell in love, and this happened, and this happened, and it honestly, the order that she says in the beginning of the movie, where she's like, I just want a black coffee and I want the veggie sandwich. And then she changes it slightly in the end. It's like, man, that's kind of the perfect thing to do, where she changed a little bit. She's trying her hardest to, like she's doing realistic changes, where it's like she's not changing as a person. Like she's just like slowly growing, like most human beings would do. Like I feel like movies over dramatize, like, look at this big character arc. Like in real life, you do have character arcs, but they're rather small to make you a better person.
In like a traditional Hollywood movie, she would have become like a famous artist or something, and she would have found like a very hot girlfriend, and she would have been like, look at, I've got it all figured out. And instead in this movie, she goes on a series of like somewhat okay to disastrous dates.
One date was just at least the conversation went okay.
One day the girl falls over. She's like,
the one where the girl fell over kills me, because I think I liked how it like called back to earlier in the movie where her friend is like, you need to get on the apps, you need to go go date. Like I don't know why you think that you're like your lesbian journey is immune to like having to date people, just like
and
the
then
rest
she's
of
just
us
gonna
have
show
to date
up at your
people.
door.
Exactly.
And that's okay. So I got to tell you, that was so relatable for me. Because the number of times friends ask me, why aren't you on the apps? Why aren't you dating? I'm like, no, I mean, I'm just. And what I'm saying in the back of my brain is, I really just want to meet a man at a ballroom and fall in love at a masquerade. That's not fucking realistic. Like, I need to be realistic and go on the apps. But that's what's going to happen. And so,
no, trust me. The apps they are that. They're exactly that. So.
I do feel like it's so realistic because it was like every time I would get on the apps, I would have to take like a couple months detox afterwards because I'd be like,
yes,
I can't do the apps anymore. I just need to stare at a wall and just like rethink all my life choices.
I was literally having a conversation with one of my friends 2 days ago about the apps because of all that, where I'm just like, I am so tired of it. Is it bad that I want to take a break? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, dude, it's not bad. And also it's not bad really you want to jump on. And it's like this really interesting kind of like story about, I think like you were just saying, Amy, it was interesting where she's like, oh, you have to try the apps. And then like she tried the apps. She might've met this girl. And then she's like, well, I'm going to go to London.
Just for 2 weeks.
Just for 2 weeks.
And the ending, I don't know how long she's going to be in London for, but we'll see.
I think she's going to be for 2 weeks because I think my thought process is it literally is just for 2 weeks. And maybe she goes, maybe she eventually comes back. But, I think that's also realistic. And so is the fact that the boyfriend broke up with her. And it's like, I don't want to move to London. You didn't even ask me. But he said it so kindly. I know that sounds weird, but it was not an aggressive breakup. It was a realistic breakup. It is, I still love you, but you're asking me to move my whole life. And
I think there were some like, red flags that relationship was like maybe not going as well as they
both too much of a yes man,
because in the beginning she has a comment with her friend like, oh, maybe I'll get engaged in London. Like she says I think she said it's like it's been 8 years or something like that, or it had been a long time, and it's like, ooh, why has it been so long? And they haven't gotten, like, they're in their early 30s at this point, so it's like it's not like they're fresh out of college or anything. It's like, why haven't they gotten engaged up to now if that's the case? So it kind of made you think like, is this relationship smooth sailing? And then as the movie goes on, you're like, no, it's not. She didn't even ask him. She just assumed he was gonna go.
And it's something that's also realistic. You know, someone's like, I have the better job, I have the higher paying job, we're going to London, how cool is that? And he's like, my family's here. And so I didn't think that was an unrealistic conversation to have, but it helped to humanize, oh my gosh, Lucy, and what's the
Jane.
Jane, thank you. I wanted to say Jen, and I knew that was wrong.
I had to look it up. I have the cast list. I'm terrible with names.
Me too. I think it helped to kind of humanize both of them and give them both flaws, which I think what that was nice about this film is that you weren't at any point, even though Lucy was the main character, you weren't always 100% on Lucy's side. There were plenty of points where you're like, Jane's got a point. Jane is being like, Jane's point is probably right. Like, Lucy's the one who messed this up at that point, or Jane's the one who messed this up at that point. And so they're like shouting match in the beginning. I think one of the reasons I liked that writing bit so much was because each thing that the person was saying was true. And that is how you know you have a true, that is when an argument really is going to affect change, because there's arguing for arguing's sake. And then there's arguing for a value system that's going to affect change in a friendship or a relationship. And in this case, I think that's what ultimately saved their friendship, is that they both recognized the other person had some good points.
Well, they're also, they were people who cared about each other. I think in the long run, they were like, we had a fight. We had to fight for a long time, but we want to make it work. And that's what's going to make a friendship last is if you've never gotten in a fight with your friend, they're probably not a friend. Because you need to get into a fight to understand where the other person's coming from. And obviously you also need to resolve that fight. If it doesn't resolve, then that friendship's not, I agree. And I think that's when you kind of see who your friends are and who they're not. Like if you get through it and see each other's side, I think that's how you get through a fight. If it's just like, no, I was right, then your friendship maybe wasn't the strongest thing in the world. And I think that's what really was so fun about this movie, is that their friendship was strong enough, and they needed to go through that fight for obviously their relationship, but then also each other. They grew as people because they kind of pushed each other a little bit in a different way. You know, it's just like, because they didn't use each other as like a crutch, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was something interesting too, is that you kind of realize when they get into this fight, that's sort of when Dakota Johnson's character Lucy finally like starts getting out of her comfort zone, because you realize they have been in a very codependent relationship for a very long time. So like Lucy felt like she didn't have to make changes because she's, you know, she knew she was going to be able to hang out with Jane. She knew she was going to be able to like go to their weird yoga class and get her same order at the diner. And when that was taken away, she was like suddenly like, okay, I guess I'll try some new stuff, because what else do I have to do? And you realize how good that ultimately was for her, even though she had that bad experience with Britt, who broke her heart. But
we'll talk about Britt in a second. But I also like that she did in her way, right? Like, I think what was really interesting to see was her friend was just like, let's go to this lesbian bar and you just should hook up with anybody. And she's like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, oh, well, why don't you dance with that lesbian? She's like, well, I don't want to dance.
I don't want
and
to.
then and then she kind of figures out, oh, I like this Brit girl. Let's see what's going on. And obviously it breaks her heart, but that's a person that she liked, and she was kind of doing it in her own way, comfortably. She was getting outside of her comfort zone, but in her way, which I thought was really, really cool to see, because you don't see that in movies very often either. If someone's getting out of their comfort zone, again, they're moving across the country and staying there, and that's it. Yeah, and I think this is a really cool way. It's like, no, lean into it. It's like, go on the dating app, go on a bad date. But you don't have to go dance with the random lesbian at the lesbian bar. Do the thing that makes you comfortable, but also get outside your comfort zone.
And it was nice that they didn't do like, let's get you out of your comfort zone by putting you in a new setting, in a new zone. Because like, how many times does that happen in Hallmark films or in these coming out shows and movies where they're like, okay, so to help this person kind of discover themselves, we're going to take them to Alaska. Or we're going to put them in a new job
exactly. Take you somewhere so weird.
Realistic.
Yeah, it's just like, well, that's not going to help you.
The only Christmas tree farm and
like the
whatever.
idea that you have to go somewhere else to start over, because realistically, how many people can do that? I don't know about you guys, but I would not be able to just be like, yeah, let me move to Washington State right now and just drop a deposit on a new place, start over, find a new job, make new friends, find a new theater company. That'll be fine. That'll help me get unstuck. Like, that's not realistic.
Yeah, and it's
that
not
allows you to be more stuck in that situation.
Precisely. And so, like, this unrealism, and I also do appreciate, well, actually, I guess it wasn't very clear in this movie. I as I get older and I become a millennial who has financial instability, I do wish that sometimes people talked more about the money thing. Like,
at the end when she's like, I quit my job and I'm painting now, and I was like, and you're paying your bills, how?
How? That's exactly what I said.
I
really wanted her.
I was like, every time I watch a movie, I just want to deep dive into people's financials, especially when it's like, I'm a sound healer, and you're like, and you make money how though with that? All your bills you're paying with that? So yeah, I thought that
way that Chakra Hammock woman makes money.
That was so fun. That scene was so
Tig
fun.
Notaro.
So
that was Tig.
Notaro was so good.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's really funny. My Instagram algorithm is basically two things right now. It is Bridgerton and acting, like tips, behind the scenes acting stuff, like all acting skits, theater skits, whatever, right? And one thing that's going around right now is this Instagram that takes a look at people's self-tapes and then shows the job that they booked. And it's jobs like that. 5-10 lines, maybe a guest spot or a short commercial. And it just struck me as like, this just reminds me of like the kind of classic, oh yeah, I submitted thinking I was not going to get this. And oh yeah, I got the crazy chakra lady because that was going to be my job. But it just cracked me up because I love that
Tina
whole
Turner
bit.
was so funny. You could tell that she was
So
like,
good.
"No, I want to do the weirdest thing in this movie. I'll pop up, but I'll be as like the weird shocker lady." I also thought that
was great.
the yoga. I felt like there was some very specific like LA kind of stuff where it's like the LA woo woo stuff that was very funny to me. And the yoga lady who comes down and was like, "You guys, I think in a past life you guys were sisters, but one of you betrayed the other one and had you burned
as a witch."
As a witch, I laughed so hard at that. It's just so random. It's like so wacky, but it does feel like something that like that kind of character would say to you, where you'd be like,
"Yep,
what?"
Now, one character we were implying before that we did not talk about is Brit, and just like how much it's interesting because she sucks, but also you could kind of again see that she's like a real person. In her mind, she's just like, well, I want to experiment. Sure. I don't give a shit. I'll experiment with Dakota Johnson's character, but also like I'm kind of hung up on my guy friend, on my old boyfriend. Also very relatable to modern dating and apps. Like, I think that was interesting too. It's just like, she kind of went through something that a lot of people go through. So it's just like, oh, I mean, I don't like Brit as a character, but she's a character. She's a person that exists in this world.
Yeah. She was, sorry, go ahead, Morgan.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
She was realistic. She was the kind of character where you initially think, and I think that what was nice is that the way that this was framed and written and shot is you do think she's on team Dakota Johnson. You do think she's on team Lucy. Like, oh, I actually think I'm kind of falling in love with you. I've been flirting with you. Let's see where this goes. And then the next morning, I was just as shocked as Lucy was that she decides not to stick around. And I think that was really good directorial choices in the way that they shot that bedroom scene. In the way
when she tries to put her arm around her and she kind of brushes it off. That's when I was like, oh no.
But she doesn't leave, but she does leave, right? Because she leaves and she's like, oh, I don't want to. Like, she doesn't like ghost her, but she's like, I don't want to be with you.
Well, and it was more like that was fun. Like, thank you, that was fun.
Exactly.
I kind of thought you were on the same vibe, and Lucy's like, yeah, I was too. But like, for instance, the choice to have her put her bra on before she went to the bathroom, also a sign. So I love that they chose those little
get out the door
choices. Yeah, she's ready to go, and she's also saying like that was fun while I was high, and that was fun while I was not sober. But in the cold light of dawn, maybe I don't want this level of intimacy with you. And so it was the kind of push that Lucy needed. But I just thought that whole section was well done. I don't in any way, shape, or form think like hate Brit. I think that she was a realistic character. And I think that's the thing with the whole thing. The whole movie was filled with realistic, honest characters that we have all at some point, in some form, met in our lifetime.
That's true. Yeah. I don't think Brittany was like a bad person. I just thought she was like a selfish person. Like she knew that Lucy liked her. And she kind of used that because she also thought Lucy was cute and she wanted to hook up with her. But when her ex became available and back on the table, it was immediately like, whoop, goodbye.
And she's a fine coworker. She's not a good friend.
And as she's explaining this to like Lucy, she's like, I'm telling you this basically because you make the schedule. Not even because like they had
I was like
they had like a little flirtation or a relationship or whatever they had. But because she makes the schedule, like that felt like a dagger to the heart. It's like so impersonal and so brutal as like sort of the end of that flirtation.
No, she's a realistically bad person, which again, I liked. I think she was kind of a realistic villain. Something we didn't really talk about either was just the queer coming out aspect of it. And I think that was also really, really well written. I know, and you guys should watch like more Tig Notaro stuff, but Tig Notaro had a documentary just called Tig. And in the documentary is about her, because the way she became popular as a comedian is that she had breast cancer. And she did this whole thing about like a funny tirade about almost dying. And so she became really popular with that. So they started making a documentary. And along the way, as they're making the documentary, she falls in love with her now wife, who was in a movie with her. In a World was an indie movie that they were in together. And Stephanie at that point was not she didn't know she was gay. And but she's like, I really like Tig a lot. And they were like best friends for a really long time. And she's like, but this is so weird. Like I like kissing you a lot. And then she figured out that she was queer, but like later in life. So this also kind of has a lot to do with her story of like, I didn't know I was gay. I just thought I didn't. I just thought I didn't love men.
That makes sense to me because it felt very personal, the story, and I wondered if it was because my experience with this movie is that Mike and I were supposed to watch it together, and then he got busy and he was like, "You start it," because we were going to record yesterday. So I was like, "Okay, let me squeeze it in." So I got halfway through, and I was like, I think you would have really liked this. And his evening ended up freeing up. So I rewatched the first part of the movie. So I was like 40 minutes in. So we went back to the beginning and watched the full thing. And that was something that he said to me he was like, is this somebody's like personal story? It feels very specific. So I'm not surprised to hear that it was Tig's wife's came from like a personal place for her.
Yeah, and I think that was really interesting because, like you just said, it is so obvious that someone had gone through this, and you don't get stories like that. Like Amy was saying, you don't get 30-year-old stories in general of people trying to figure it out.
No.
And I think that's really, really cool of something like a queer story in particular, where they're like, I just didn't know. And I love that moment in the bed between her and her friend where she just comes out and she's like, you ever tell anyone? And she's like, no, I didn't. I literally didn't know.
I didn't know. Yeah.
I really loved the part where she basically says like, well, what do you mean you didn't know? And then she talks about how she's embarrassed that she didn't know, that she's embarrassed that she's 32 years old and just figuring this out. And she's like, no. I'm sure people figure this all the time. And Lucy just kind of looks at her and is like, people know at 9. Like, people know at a young age. So just because someone else knows at a young age doesn't mean your story is any less different or valid.
And her friend says that too, which I think was really like her friend like said all the right things. And I think there was a moment where Dakota Johnson's like, did you know? She's like, I mean, I didn't, but I kind of did, like it's not surprising to me, but yeah, no, she kind of says all the right things where she's like, everyone's got their own journey. But then also going back to the millennial aspect of it all, it's like, yeah, queerness was very different 10 years ago as it is now. People who are 9 are figuring it out is because they grew up in this time, not growing up in the time that we grew up in.
It was a really well done scene, but it felt very personal. And there's a lot of things to connect with there, even if you're not connecting necessarily with the coming out story. You can still connect with the entire, I'm stuck at 32, or this is something I just figured out about myself, and aren't I behind the ball? Is this too late to start? Am I okay? Is this okay? Am I okay? Or
I
am
really
I messed
connected
up
with
that I didn't
like
figure
the
this
sort
out?
of the late bloomer aspect of it, because before I met my husband, I hadn't been in any like really serious relationship. So at the one scene where she says like, Brittany asks her, how long is like, when was your last serious relationship? She was like, like I've only ever dated people for a couple of months. And I was like, oh God, that was like me too. In my at like 29, 30 too. So I really connected to that aspect as well, where I was like, I mean, I feel like society kind of tells you should be at a certain place at a certain time in your life. And that's like not the case for most people. I feel like not a lot of people fit on that timeline, but like society makes you feel bad about that usually. And her and kind of realizing like, this is why, and here are these reasons. And like, actually kind of coming into her own. I think that was like a nice to have as a 32 or 34-year-old in this movie versus like, what we usually see for these stories, which is like 22.
Who are like babies. I mean, when you look back at it, 22, you're in college, whatever. Maybe you just graduated college, but that's also the time when you just graduated college. And also like when you just And when you just graduate college, right? Everyone's in that space of like, I don't have a job, because literally no one has a job. So, but like to see the 32-year-old story, it's just like everyone's in a different space when you're 32. So no, I really I saw the comment that was supposed to be in our private
Amy's
chat.
losing the light.
She is losing the light. But no, I agree. What I was gonna say is that going back to the title, Am I Okay? It's just like, it's the idea of like, am I okay? Because like emotionally I don't feel okay. And Dakota Johnson says that so many times. Like, I'm not okay. But then it's also like comparing yourself. And I think there's a lot in that in this movie. She's not physically comparing herself to her friend, but she's just like, well, am I doing this right? Is this person doing it right? Am I doing it right? And the whole point of the movie is that no one's doing anything right. The girl, your best friend, who seems like she does have it all figured out. She's moving back to the town that she grew up with. She has the boyfriend that's going to move with her.
She just got a big career upgrade. Yeah,
right. And she doesn't even have it figured out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jane really works really well as like a contrast to her, because in the beginning of the movie, it does seem like Jane has everything figured out and Lucy doesn't have any of those things figured out. And by the end, you see that there's cracks in Jane's facade too, that she doesn't have everything figured out either. And that she's, you know, she's no further along really than Lucy is. And like, nobody kind of is further along than anybody else. Everybody's kind of
there is no further along, right?
Exactly.
There is none. The whole point is everyone's on their own journey, and that's it. And that was what's kind of so beautiful. And again, why I really like the idea of how Dakota Johnson's character grew was just like, again, there's times where she really went out of her shell. Like, again, the dating apps is a great example, but then there's dates where she's like, that went really, really badly, you know, and then it's like, I'm going to go with my friend for 2 weeks to London. And I like,
she better be renting out her place for an Airbnb, because how else is she going to be making money?
She quit her job too. So I don't know how she's making
she's
money
selling
either.
all those paintings for a lot of money, I guess.
For sure.
I was like, can we circle back around to the fact that you quit your job? Where is your money coming from now?
I think her friend's gonna have to lend some money.
And,
but I think that's cool about the movie.
The last thing I'll point out that I just thought of right now is that, you know, a lot of times in a lot of movies, this is going to sound really interesting. A lot of movies like this, there's a family aspect. There is my family, my mom, my dad, my brother, my cousin, my sister. This is how they think about my gayness. Or this is how they think about my stuck. This is how they think about my life.
She doesn't even seem to care. She's just more of like, everyone's going to find out on this person I know from the dating app is going to find out that I'm gay. And she's like, but they're probably gay too if they're there. And also, who gives a shit?
But the exception of that line, there's no mention of their families throughout.
Sure. Yeah. Because they're each other's family in some way.
Me to come back. Exactly. And so it's such a beautiful story about a found family, and I also really connect with that and the idea of a found family and how those kind of relationships can be just as strong but also just equally as fragile as your actual familial relations. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I love that wasn't like, it wasn't like, oh, let me go talk to my parents or my dad and we have like a weekly lunch kind of thing. Like, it's the kind of thing where realistically you're like, I don't know if these people talk to their parents on a regular basis or their other siblings. Do they even have one? We don't know, because it wasn't that story to tell. I like that this story was just about the friendship ultimately and what it means to become your own person and your own individual while telling that friendship story.
Yeah, and I thought it was so interesting, the point that you made, Kat, about this feeling like a very millennial story, where like, not saying that it's great out there for LGBTQ people. Obviously right now is kind of a bad time, but the acceptance really does feel like it's in a different place than like when we were all growing up. But I think that there's, when she says, when she sort of makes the comment where she's like, I know no one's going to really care, and I know everyone's going to like want me to be happy, but I don't want to be this other thing. I don't want to be this different thing. Like that felt very, that line really hit. Like that line felt very real to me, like as something that you would think as you're going through this is like, no, I don't want to have to like explain myself constantly to other people. Like, I don't want to be this different thing. It's not that I think that there's anything wrong with it. It's that I don't want to like, you know, I
don't want it.
Explaining myself. Yeah.
That was a really powerful line.
It's just such a nuanced film that I hope that you go see. I do truly believe this is a movie that you can it could be easily missed, and I don't think it should be, because we see a lot of queer movies, and I haven't seen a movie that has hit this hard in a long time because
I
it's so
agree.
realistic. Because sometimes it's like too wholesome. It's too like, oh, look at them be fun and cozy. It's like, yeah, but there's not a lot of drama there. Too happy ending. Or there's the opposite where it's too traumatic, or just like, or there's too many plot lines going on and like happiest seasons.
Yeah, I would say like it's either really, really like a Hallmark movie, or it's the most depressing movie you've ever seen. Mike calls them my sad lesbian movies. And I'm like, you leave me alone. And he's like, are you enjoying this? I'm like, of course I'm not. But like, you know, for every like Hallmark movie, like the one that we talked about, there's, you know, what's the Portrait of a Lady on Fire, where she just stares at the water for 45 minutes and you're like, yeah, it's gonna get good any day now. It's turning. I know it is. And then everybody ends up miserable and dead or something at the end, and you're like, great. And I feel like this one felt, you know, it didn't feel like a Hallmark movie, and it didn't feel like I didn't come out of it crushingly depressed. It felt very realistic. It felt like, honest. And it felt like a movie that I would put on again, which I can't say sometimes about some of the other queer movies where I watch it and like, well, I watched it, but I would watch this again because it was really fun. It was like
it's light in some ways. Yeah, it's like light, even though it's not comedic. It's just like it's very easy to watch.
Yeah, it has good dialogue. The characters have really good chemistry together. Like all the characters, and like her and her best friend have great chemistry together. Her and Brittany have really good chemistry together, because Brittany was very very flirty. I was like, I also had a moment where I was like, who is she? Because I was dying because I recognized her, and I realized that she plays Iris in the Flash movies, like the DC Flash movies. And when I realized that, I went, oh my God, because I was spending the whole movie going, she looks so familiar. But yeah, there's so much good chemistry in this movie, which honestly can do a lot I mean, this movie I feel like was really tight and like well written, but like in a movie where there might be plot holes or something, like if you give me good chemistry, I can really paper over those. So this movie had like a tight plot, and it also had good chemistry, which is not always the case. Sometimes you're watching these and you're like, I like the banter, but these people seem like they've just met today.
Yeah, no, it's a really fantastic movie. If you guys, please watch it. I want to see it get more support. I don't see enough people talking about it. And yeah, no, I'm really glad we all liked it, because it's also been a long time since all three of us have seen something. We're like, wow, we all really liked it and felt exactly the same about it.
Yeah, I liked it so much. I was like, oh, this is a good one. Because sometimes we go into what we think is going to be a movie we're all going to enjoy, and then we come out and we're like, not that one. So it was nice to be really like, this one was good. We all liked it. We all had a good time.
Yeah, it definitely had it had some good Ava Lance vibes to it. The honest conversation bits.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I agree. Go see it. Any other closing thoughts on the movie?
Go see it. Check it out. Let us know what you think.
Did
Email
Tig Notaro write this, or did she
I think
write it?
Someone else did. Let me see. Am I okay?
I know she directed.
They both directed. I don't know who wrote it. Let's see. Writing wise, someone completely different was Lauren Pomerantz, and they have written. Let's see what they've written. They are known for actually writing for the Ellen DeGeneres show.
Interesting.
And that's like their biggest thing is they're a comedic writer. So
I see that I saw she was married to, and I looked really quickly and I thought it was Mary Higgins Clark, and I was like, no way. But she is married to Elizabeth Higgins Clark. So now I have to wonder if that's like, is this person related to Mary Higgins Clark, the writer of like the mystery writer? Now I have so many additional questions about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
While Morgan does her Googling,
I'm going on a deep dive.
That you guys can email us your thoughts at thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. We haven't had any email in a while, so send us emails. You can find us on Twitter, legends_podcast, Instagram at thelegendaryladies. We also have Patreon with new levels that include a $5, $7, and $10 level. The $7 level, you get access to one live stream a month. The $10 level, you get access to all live streams all month, which is totes worth it, because you get to join the chat. And so, like, you could have joined in on this episode, which would have been super cool. But you can find us at patreon.com/thelegendaryladies. We've got some cool episodes coming up. We're going to be talking about some Bridgerton stuff, maybe some Game of Thrones stuff, some I don't know, cult documentary maybe. We got plans. We got thoughts.
Perhaps.
Well, next week, me and Morgan are going to be watching Hitman, the Netflix movie. So hopefully that is just as good as this. But I don't know. I feel like this could be hard to
going. What if we keep?
I hope so. I think it's gonna be hard to top, but we'll see.
I think it is, but it looks fun.
Just for our listeners, the next 3 weeks are going to be some duo episodes while we manage my rehearsal schedule, some travel schedule, some more conventions and all that stuff. So I don't know why I called them conventions.
I
liked it.
Conventions. You gotta
do
go,
make me feel good about
rehearsals. Morgan's got to go to her vacation. But yeah, so we're going to be doing duo episodes. So next week is Kat and Morgan. Week after that is Kat and me. And then the last full week of June is going to be Morgan and I. And we're definitely going to be doing our Bridgerton wrap-up episode. But that
doing something without me
Patreon
that
exclusive.
I won't.
Patreon exclusive. We're going to be talking about the whole season.
I'm sure Morgan.
I can't wait. I can't
episode
wait.
5 is where it's at.
Oh, I just know there's going to be. I know there's going to be some nudity, and I am ready.
Luke, who plays Colin, there's all these interviews going around where people are like, you realize that people are obsessed with just your fingers right now, and he literally was like, okay, you have no idea, that carriage scene is so tame compared to episode 5. And I'm sitting there going,
I watched a reel or something where they were like, we broke a piece of furniture, and I was
like, I sent it to you. I have now been officially sending you all the Bridgerton behind the scenes reels.
We're just sending each other Bridgerton reels back and forth on Instagram.
That's literally all my algorithm right now is Bridgerton and acting advice, and it's great.
In case it was going to haunt anybody else like it haunted me. I found the New York Times write-up of the writer of this movie's wedding to her wife Elizabeth Higgins Clark, who is indeed the granddaughter of best-selling author Mary Higgins Clark.
Wow!
Excellent.
So you were a detective, and
I was the detective this time.
You scoped that. Excellent.
I did it. Well, the fun fact for you to bring out at a party sometime.
Speaking of, Morgan, tell me where we could find you so you could give us even more fun facts about mystery novelists.
all the mystery novelists and what their granddaughters are doing. You can.
Well, I want to know.
Right?
If they're gay, especially.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where we are covering the new season of the animated show My Adventures with Superman, which Supergirl is going to be in at some point. So you should definitely check that out. Also, it's a really good show. Like, we just started watching it because we were like, oh, this could be fun. And then I was like, oh, I legitimately like it. That's not always the case with some of the stuff that we watch. So I enjoy it when I actually like the thing. I'm like, yes, this is very good. So I can't wait to see Supergirl pop up.
That's all you can ask for.
Kat, do you have maybe a Kickstarter going on?
I do, and it's doing so well. We're really happy about it. Transphoria, trans and non-binary comic anthology. We have that up for all of June for Pride Month. So go check it out if you want some queer representation.
What's the website?
So go on Kickstarter. You could put in Transphoria. You'll find it. If not, at Comic Uno, you'll find. I just realized my name's Kat and Phil this whole entire time.
Yeah, reminder, you guys can watch the video of this on YouTube. And you can see the sun literally setting, kind of behind me, but you can watch the sky darken in San Diego.
It was beautiful.
It was, right? Isn't it a gorgeous sunset? And that's not even the sunset area.
You get a free sunset by watching the YouTube video.
Well, I mean, you could join our Patreon for the not free sunset version.
That's true. And then you could have been chatting live in the chat.
Join us for legendary sunsets. It just sounds like something that's not legal.
It's totally legal. It's on our Patreon. Go check it out.
That's what it is every week you guys just get or every month we just do one video of the sunset outside my house, and I'm just like, I don't know, eating food or something like that. I'm
doing time lapse.
Just a real time sunset, and like as Amy's just kind of going about her day.
Someone would watch
sunset.
it.
Somebody would watch
absolutely. It. Who knows? Maybe I'll recruit the Patreon members to help me with my lines, because I often practice my lines out here on the deck.
Speaking there you go.
You guys can find me in Much Ado About Nothing in Temecula, California, which is just a bit about halfway between like Orange County and San Diego. We are performing July 11th through the 21st. It's 2 weekends, 6 shows total. 6 shows? Yeah, 6 shows total, Thursday through Saturday nights. I'm playing Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, which has a huge line load, and I'm having so much fun with it, but oh my gosh, it's so much memorizing. So if anyone has any memorizing tricks, send them my way, because I'm trying everything, and we'll get there. But yeah, if you guys are able to come see it, I would love to see you. ShakespeareInTheVines.org. Let me know you're coming, because I have comps available.
Ooh.
Oh, and Thursdays are Pay What You Can nights, which is really, really cool.
That's awesome.
That's our way to support the community. So Thursdays, it's a nonprofit organization that is doing a third of their shows are Pay What You Can nights. So I think that's a really good way for us to give back.
Very cool.
Well, we got a lot going on this summer, so go check out all our stuff. And until next time, stay legendary.